So the next speaker, I'm looking for him, is Parag Shiralkar, the president of Sumptuous Data Sciences. Hello, Parag. And his talk is on the interoperability of Leigh syndrome patient registry data with regulatory submission standards. Take it away, Parag.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And my sincere thanks to Curmito Foundation and Sophia and Casey for giving me this opportunity to talk and give a synopsis of the interoperability of Leigh syndrome patient registry data project that we are working in collaboration with Curmito Foundation and Sumptuous Data Sciences. Real quick here, I just wanted to mention that this presentation is essentially the follow-up of what Sophia mentioned about the patient registry, and then Rhonda talked about the CD standards. What we are trying to do here is the patient registry data, we are applying the CD standards and keeping the mechanism of the interoperability ready for the patient registry data. So I would do a quick recap of what is patient registry data, how the collection is designed, and how the data is stored or hosted. Sophia covered this aspect in her presentation, but I would just quickly mention it here, that this is the data collected from the questionnaire response from the patients. It is based out of NIH Common Data Element Repository, survey questionnaire design, and it is stored in the CORDS platform, which is a coordination of rare disease at Sanford. Those who want to know more about how this has been designed, how the data collection is designed, they can go to this reference and find out more about NIH Common Data Elements. So what is the new drug application or biologic license application requirement, the filing requirement with regulatory authorities, whether it is FDA or EMA or PMDA, the Japanese agency? Rhonda gave a brief synopsis of which regulatory agencies made it mandate to use the CD standards and which are recommending to use CD standards. But really what they're looking for when you submit this data to the to the regulatory agencies, they look for traceability of data, transparency, conformance, compliance, integrity, sufficiency. I mean, you can go on and on, but what it really means is they want the data in a standard format, which is agreed upon by the industry, by the public, and by the regulatory agency. This is why they are saying that the data need to be submitted in clinical data standards. And here is some reference I have for providing regulatory submission in electronic format, standardized study data at FDA. So this is exactly why the standardization of data is important. And here are a couple of screenshots where this is the guidance by Food and Drug Administration. And here is some highlighted text from the guidance, which explicitly mentioned that the data submitted to regulatory agency need to be in CD standard. Now, in terms of interoperability, now think about it. We have the patient registry data collected at Curmito Foundation based on the NIH Common Data Elements, whereas the regulatory agencies look for the data in CD standards. So we are really talking in two different languages when it comes to use of data or looking at the data is concerned. And the creating of that bridge is exactly what is interoperability establishment. So we create a mechanism to make sure that this data in common data elements of NIH gets converted into CDs based data so that it is ready for submission and analysis purpose when it comes to the new drug application. Now, Rhonda talked about it in detail, but I would just show the three basic areas where we look for the data in certain standards, which is at the collection stage, submission stage and the analysis stage. So it's not going into too many details, but we are talking about the C collection or the C dash standards, submission or STTM standards, and ADAM or analysis data model. So when we establish the interoperability, this patient registry data is actually in these standards ready to be used or ready to be analyzed by a regulatory agency. So we have this collaborated project between Cure-Mito Foundation and Sumptuous Data Sciences to establish the interoperability of the patient registry data. So if you think about these two poles, like one talk about the patient registry data and the second talk about the CDISC-based data in the collection stage, data collection stage. If we think of interoperability, we are talking about four distinct aspects here. First of all, alignment of patient registry data with the C-dash domains. So the data in C-dash is collected in certain standard format, like, you have demographic data, you have concomitant medications, you have clinical findings, and so on. Whereas the patient registry data we have is questionnaire response, and that questionnaire response has everything. It has demographic information, it has clinical finding information, but this need to be segregated into different data domains when it comes to conversion to C-dash. So that's the first part. The second part is development of data map to align the content of data, or which is in data language, we call it as variables. Third being conducting the data transformation. So actually having the codes to convert the registry data into the C-dash. And then last part is drafting the process specification. So tomorrow, any sponsor or the treatment development companies, pharmaceutical company want to use this type of data, they have a complete mechanism ready, which can show how the registry data is converted into the acceptable format, regulatory acceptable format, or C-dash or CDIS format. So currently where we stand now, this is the project we are currently working on. And if you see each step here, we are done with the first part. The registry data has been analyzed and domains in C-dash are being created. We have the mapping mechanism complete. And currently the data transformation is in process. We are working on actual conversion of data to C-dash. And we have the preliminary assessment ready for the specifications, process specifications. So this is where we stand in terms of the interoperability project that we started back in end of May this year. Here are some key findings. Now, the good news is significant portion of the data from registry can be mapped to C-dash domain. And this is a really big thing, because one thing is the data you collect does it meet the necessity and sufficiency purpose for for the clinical reporting. And second thing is how much % of that is getting actually in alignment with the CDIS standards. So the great news is that more than 90% data is actually that can be mapped to C-dash, and these are some of the representative domains. And again, not to get into too many technical jargons, but these two-letter abbreviation really represent the type of data in C-dash. So for instance, when we say CE, this is clinical, sorry, CE, this is a clinical events, DM is demographic, DS is disposition, then MH is medical history, QS is questionnaire. So this is a standard nomenclature developed by CDISC, and this is why the standardization is important, because we all can speak in same language when it comes to data. Another important finding is that a lot of data pertaining to pharmacogenomics and genetic findings, medical history and questionnaire domains is what we find in registry. So here is some example, like how exactly what we mean by establishing interoperability and how the data gets mapped from NIH common data elements in patient registry to the CDISC based C-dash standards. So here is first example. For instance, in patient registry data, you have a column called symptom for seizures. And then you have another column stating value yes, no. Now, remember the slide that Rhonda presented about the gender, how differently the gender is represented, right? And how we can get it commonality when it comes to CD standards. So now the commonality here in CD standard, when we talk about collection or C dash, is this typical data can go into questionnaire type of data, and the variable QS test has a value, did the patient have seizure symptom, and the output is in QS ORRES variable, and it has possible value of yes and no. So think about it. If you give this column with yes, no to any regulatory authority, they won't understand what exactly to do with this because they have their own system developed based on the CDIS. If you give this data as QS test and QS ORRES, they get it. Okay, this is how this is, and then you understand the content of the data. So another example is in patient registry, there is a variable called diagnosis gene mutation, and value is yes and no, yes or no. So when we convert this type of data to C dash, we get it into a pharmacogenomic genetic finding domains, and in C dash it is microbiology. So you talk about PF test with a genetic test value, and PFORRES or PF results with a value yes and no. So in other words, this is the language that regulatory authority would like to see the data in. Um, so this is where we are right now working. And now where we stand and where we are heading with this interoperability establishment, and how can it help accelerate the research using this data. So we talked about 3 stages of data. One is collection, second is tabulation or submission, and third being the analysis. So as I described, the mapping mechanism is complete, data transformation is in process, and we are looking at estimated completion time for completion of transformation of data by October 2022. So by end of next month, we should be complete with the mapping mechanism as well as the data being mapped in C dash. So our next step now is to convert this C dash data with STTM. And like Rhonda mentioned, there is a very fine process within CDIS to get this conversion quick and seamless. And then we do compliance assessment of STTM and keep the data ready for ADAM or analysis data. So when we keep it ready for ADAM, this is basically the data is ready to be analyzed for statistical analysis. So how does this accelerate the research? We do have establishment of mechanism and process for ingestion, acquisition, and standardization of patient registry data, which is essentially a real world data. It has now with this mechanism, you have ability to share this data available through registry in a very compliant format, which can be accepted by regulatory agencies. And this can expedite the data representation, reporting, management, and analysis for faster research or faster results of the data. So I would like to thank Sophia and Casey from Curmito Foundation for initiating this project and collaborating with us. And from Sumptuous Data Sciences, I would like to thank Pallavi Bakare, who is really our SME in CDIS, who is driving this whole process, and Jafanya Bhupati, who is actually doing the transformation of data. So thank you, everyone. And again, thank you so much to Curmito Foundation for giving me this opportunity to talk. Over to you, Daniel. Any questions I would be okay to take.
Thank you.